Hello, everyone. My name is Preston Dennett, and welcome to a new episode of UFOs and the Paranormal. I call this episode Aliens Took Our Baby. This is a very controversial aspect of UFO contact known as the missing fetus syndrome, in which a pregnancy disappears, often in association with a UFO encounter. I've investigated many cases like this, but this is one of the most unusual, and that's why I wanted to present it to you today. This case begins in January 2006 and involves a young couple that I call Charles and Maria. This is not their real name. They prefer to remain anonymous. They had just moved into a new home on the eastern coast of Canada, and they were dealing with all the complications of moving. The house needed a lot of repairs. Maria herself was dealing with some red tape issues with the Canadian government in terms of her citizenship, as well as health insurance. And Charles was starting his own business. So they had a lot going on, and that's when they became pregnant. They were planning on becoming pregnant, but not so soon. Still, it was good news. They were quite excited about it, and they immediately started to prepare. They outfitted one of the rooms in their home to become a nursery. They, of course, went to the doctor who confirmed the pregnancy with blood tests and other tests. And they hired a midwife. They told all their family. And everything was going great. In fact, the pregnancy proceeded perfectly normally. Maria's belly grew in size. About 3 or 4 months, they started to feel the baby kick, both she and Charles. Maria had all the symptoms associated with pregnancy. They visited the doctor several times and the midwife tracking the pregnancy, which again was completely normal. The first really strange thing to happen occurred in July of 2006, about 6.5 to 7 months into the pregnancy. They had decided to attend a dinner party at the home of one of their friends, and on the drive there, they became disoriented, lost their way, and the next thing they knew, they were arriving at their friend's house too early, they thought. It was quite puzzling to them. They didn't see any UFOs. They had no reason to think that this might involve the UFO phenomena. That was the farthest thing from their mind. So they didn't really think much of it. But it was just 2 weeks later, on August 2nd, 2006, when they had a very unusual experience. They are now 7.5 months pregnant. At that time, the baby had moved into a breech position, and their midwife had prescribed various exercises to encourage the fetus to move into a proper position. So Maria had been doing that. This could be significant considering what happened next. They went to bed that evening, and in the middle of the night they were awoken by a huge lightning storm directly over their home. This was not a lightning storm like any other that they had experienced before. It was quite violent, very low over their home. And in fact, they saw bolts of lightning crashing down into their backyard and became quite frightened, especially when they saw a really strange bolt of lightning moving horizontally right in front of their bedroom window. So they were frightened about this, and Charles jumped up to close the window, and he hopped back into bed. And the next thing they know, it's morning, and they are waking up. They thought that was quite unusual because they had a lot of adrenaline flowing. But not only that, they both felt somewhat groggy and disoriented. As Maria says, "When I woke up, I noticed that my movements were very flowing and supple. The pressure on my ribs caused by the breech position of the baby was completely gone. At first, I thought that the exercises must have worked that our midwife taught me. I felt weird and a little dizzy and completely out of balance. I did not seem to be able to wake up, like having an anesthetic. I remember telling Charles that for some reason I did not feel pregnant anymore." Charles could not believe this. He's like, "What do you mean you're not pregnant? Of course you're pregnant." She had not experienced any bleeding. There was no miscarriage. There was no reason to think that she wasn't pregnant, other than that they both did notice that Maria's belly had seemed to decrease in size. So they were both quite concerned about this. They also noticed one other thing. There was a weird triangular mark on Maria's foot, on the arch of her foot. As she says, "I never had anything like that before. This part of my foot is quite hollow, so it does not even touch the ground while walking." They had an appointment with the midwife in just 2 days, so they immediately went to see her, and the midwife became very concerned. They were planning on having a home birth, but after the midwife did the tests, she started measuring Maria's belly, and Maria had gone down in measurement. As Maria says, "When she measured my belly, I had gone down in measurement from 34 weeks to 27 weeks. She was very surprised and astonished, and at first she thought, like us that morning, that the baby had changed positions. Then the midwife tried to find a heartbeat, and she could not find the heartbeat of the baby. She speculated that perhaps the baby's heartbeat was beating in time with Maria's, but that made no sense because a baby's heartbeat is much quicker than a full-grown adult. So she was quite concerned and told them that the baby might be having a heart problem. She couldn't say what exactly was going on, but recommended that they go visit the doctor as soon as possible. At that time, they were planning on having an ultrasound in about 2 weeks later, but they didn't want to wait, so they moved up the appointment and went to see the doctor. And the nurse rather, began to examine Maria, and as Maria says, "The nurse took my blood pressure and investigated my belly. She also tried to locate the heartbeat of the baby several times without results. She called up the obstetrician right away and looked up the information at the other hospital where the heartbeat was confirmed before, and I had had a routine check by 2 different nurses. They had both confirmed that the baby was okay, the belly the right size, a strong placenta, and the heartbeat of 139, nice and regular. And my home doctor had confirmed the pregnancy as well at 25 weeks. So they brought in the obstetrician, and the obstetrician conducted tests and told them that there was no evidence that she was pregnant any longer. He did not know how to explain it. He said perhaps there was a misdiagnosis, but there was no baby. And he said probably there would be disciplinary action taken, but he really had no way to explain this other than a misdiagnosis. Maria and Charles did not believe there had been a misdiagnosis. The pregnancy had been confirmed multiple times. Not only had they heard the heartbeat, they had felt the baby kick, both of them. She had all the symptoms of pregnancy, so there was just no way they thought that this could have been a misdiagnosis. Certainly not all the way to 7.5 months. But the doctor said, "I'm very sorry, you are no longer pregnant," and sent them home. They, of course, both started crying at this news. They were devastated. They did not know how to explain this, and started looking up information about how this could have happened to them. And this is when they realized that there is a phenomenon known as the missing fetus syndrome that is associated with the UFO phenomenon. And they were very puzzled about this because they don't remember seeing ETs or UFOs during the pregnancy. However, both admit that they did have a history of UFO encounters. They reached out to several UFO researchers before finding me, and I asked them about this. And Charles said yes. At one point earlier in his life, he was quite depressed and had been praying about it and saw what he believes are 2 UFOs, which definitely helped lift his depression. And Maria said that she had often dreamt about light beings. This was quite common for her, and in fact, these weren't all just dreams. She says on at least a couple of occasions throughout her life, she has seen what she describes as light beings in her room. Turns out Charles's father also has a history of UFO sightings. Maria's father is a well-known psychical researcher in Europe. So these are little clues that perhaps there is a real connection here to the UFO phenomena. But it's the missing pregnancy that really clinched it, because there was just no way to explain this. And the first thing they did was tell their both parents. To their surprise, their parents, both sets of them, were very supportive. And as Maria says, and I quote, "To our surprise, the people in our environment did react with understanding. We just told them what happened and spoke our truth, and I guess that is the best you can do. The people who attend conservative churches called it an act of God, or the signs and wonders that were predicted for the end times. Other people who feel more comfortable with UFO sightings in other dimensions could immediately sense a connection there and talked freely about it. It is kind of beautiful that everyone has their approach to give it a place in their lives." Immediately following this, Maria did take a picture of her belly, which she sent to me, as well as the records from her midwife. And as Maria says, "This picture was taken August 3rd. I was very confused and had been crying, as you can see in this picture. I put my hands behind my back because we were both amazed where my big belly went, so the slimmer belly would show good. We had the feeling that there was something weird going on, so even if we were not really in the mood, we made the picture that morning anyway, just to have it on file." And she also took a picture of the mark on her foot. And while they did send these to me, unfortunately I do not have them now, as my computer crashed at some point after interviewing them, and I had failed to make a backup of this. So I apologize for that, but I can tell you that I did in fact see her medical records and pictures confirming her pregnancy. So this was quite traumatic for them. I think Charles was probably more upset than Maria. Maria felt a weird sense of peace and calmness about the whole thing, and the more she thought about it, she became absolutely convinced that her baby was still alive and well and being well taken care of. As Maria says, and I quote, "I still experience a feeling of a very light, high frequency and a bright energy that feels very peaceful. My sleeping pattern is still somewhat weird. I wake up suddenly, but no fear at all, and feel dizzy when waking up. I can fall asleep at any moment during the day. Somehow, I feel very much at peace with what happened, and when I think about it, I have the tendency to smile because I have the sure feeling that our baby is in good hands, or energy, or whatever you want to call it. I just have to take time to meditate and connect after all the 'where's the baby?' and 'did you already give birth?' questions in our environment have been answered." So they dealt with this as best as they could, and it was quite traumatic, but yeah, Maria seems to be okay with it. I was quite surprised. It's certainly not the only person I've interviewed who has felt this way. Some do feel a very strong sense of violation. Each case is different, but Maria feels no fear, and she feels like her contacts are very benevolent. She did try to reach out to the doctors to get her tests and medical records to verify all this, but the doctors were extremely uncooperative. As Maria says, "We have never heard back from the medical establishment. We sent faxes and additional information, but total silence. We know that they had contact among each other. They only told us that they don't understand it, and when we ever consider another baby, the head obstetrician of the hospital gave us his phone number so I can be his, quote, special patient right away. Normally, he has a waiting list for new patients for over 6 months, so that must say something." I think it does. I investigated another case involving a missing fetus, and afterwards the nurse approached the patient and said, "I'm not supposed to tell you this, but your pregnancy records are being sent to a government lab." And she was very surprised about that and wanted the mother to know this. So I think the medical establishment is to some degree aware of these missing fetus syndrome. So that is pretty much the extent of the case. I did lose contact with them for many years. Years later, I did reach out to Charles and have corresponded with him. He is no longer with Maria. He believes that she may have actually gone with the ETs, though he can't confirm this. He will say, or he did say, that he, prior to her leaving, he had some very weird dreams, lucid dreams, which he thinks are probably more than dreams, in which he was taken on board a craft with her and saw human-like ETs. She's a very spiritual person, would often read to him while he was sleeping and trying to educate him on various spiritual subjects. I did cover this case in my book, Wondrous. I think it's a very important case because I have never investigated a case involving a missing fetus at 7.5 months. Usually it's about 3 months, maybe 4, but I've never investigated a case beyond that, except for this one. So that's very unusual. What I also find unusual is how Maria feels that this was a very positive experience for her. So I cannot confirm where Maria is now, but Charles, last I heard, is a single man and doing well. And this case, again, is one of many involving the missing fetus syndrome and speaks to the ET agenda of producing hybrid babies or being certainly interested in human reproduction. So that's why I wanted to present this case to you today. It's got some very unusual elements and really illustrates this ET agenda quite well. So I want to thank you once again for listening. That's it for today. I really appreciate you watching. And until next time, keep searching for answers and keep having fun.